Hi, welcome to CJ Creates. I'm CJ, and I create stuff. Back in August of 2024, I decided to resurrect my YouTube channel and introduce a new trio of starters for my fan-made region, the Wentano region. Now, over a year and a half later, this chapter of my YouTube career is coming to a close, so we are going out with a bang. This video has been a long time coming, and I intend to give it everything I've got. 4 new legendary Pokemon, 4 new Gigantamax forms, and a whole lot of lore. For the uninitiated, the Wentano region is based on the southwestern United States, ranging from California to the Rocky Mountains. Its other primary influence is Super Sentai or Power Rangers. I'll let you pick which one you prefer. A while back, I tried to create videos that just covered the story of the Wentano region through the lenses of fake games called Pokemon Amber and Pokemon Granite. They didn't perform great, so I dropped them, but all the lore I had in place and planned for subsequent videos is still knocking around inside my head. And now you get to hear it. The Pokemon you see before you is a legendary Pokemon akin to something like the Lake Trio, where they have a significant story implication in Pokemon Platinum, even if they aren't on the box. What you are looking at is one of 2 Guardian Pokemon who defend ancient relics that have sealed away our box legendaries. Long story short, depending on which game you would have chosen, you're either allied with a group of Poke Rangers led by Soraya in Pokemon Amber, or a standalone ranger named Xander in Pokemon Granite. Each acts as the antagonist in the opposite game, and we're going to get into that more in a little bit. Let's talk about this Pokemon itself, though. I wanted it to feel mysterious and powerful, as well as ancient. On top of all of that, it needed to be a mix of the 2 box legendaries. Specifically, it reflects one visually and the other thematically, if that makes sense. Though it probably won't until you get to the very end of the video, so sorry, no spoilers. But just wait a second, I guess? I don't know. One way to achieve this was to lean into what bats are known for, their excellent hearing, by removing this Pokemon's ability to see altogether. By covering its eyes with stone and replacing its wings with the same material, this Pokemon instantly leads you to ask questions about how it came to be this way. One of the primary themes of the Wentano region has been man versus nature, but also history. Many of my Pokemon have frustratingly muddled origins because records of them have been lost or destroyed. This is one such Pokemon. What I can tell you is that it possesses incredible psychic abilities and equal strength in its echolocation. This Pokemon can't just hear your heart beating inside your chest, but it can also feel its pulse physically. This is actually how it flies. Stone wings would be much too heavy. Instead, it causes itself to float and mimic flight. It's still nocturnal, like a real bat, which has led many to hear its haunting songs as it flies around the Wentano Mountains at night. You may even hear its song during the day deep within caves, but that's much more rare. Singing is how this Pokemon echolocates over long distances or in large areas. Meet Sonocite, the singing stone Pokemon. Sonocite lacks the ability to truly fly due to the heavy nature of its wings. It instead relies on strong psychic capabilities to lift itself into the air and mimic flight. Though blind, Sonocite's song returns to its ears, giving it a full picture of its surroundings. The stones in its body resonate with the song, amplifying the Pokemon's psychic powers. Its eerie song has been the source of many rumors of a haunting deep in the Wentano Mountains. So, what does Sonocite guard? Well, these 2 artifacts that enable both Honchkrow and Dustox to Gigantamax, or rather, Fury Max and Hero Max respectively. These are my new additions to the gimmick, though in practice they aren't all that fundamentally different from Gigantamax, and are more of a thematic choice than anything. The only real difference would be that the Pokemon must be holding their relics to reach the new form, but I bet that messes with the balance of competitive stuff. I'm awful at thinking about that, so if anyone has ideas about how these new forms could offset the loss of the item slot, let me know in the comments. I'm a big Honchkrow fan. I think it's hilarious to take a little crow in Murkrow that was so obviously a witch and turn it into a mob boss. It's very well executed too. Honchkrow is the next in a line of Dark-type Pokemon that are able to Fury Max thanks to resonating with the rage of an ancient Pokemon. Fury Max Pokemon are the representation of Kaiju, or Super Sentai enemies in Pokemon. In Pokemon Amber, you would be able to defeat them by fighting alongside the Poke Rangers, and in Pokemon Granite, you would fight alongside them to defeat the evil Poke Rangers. I know, it's kind of the double-edged sword of these dual Pokemon games, but there are 2 primary things that I wanted to emphasize in making a mob boss kaiju. 1, the ability to command, and 2, the ability to intimidate. Fury Max Pokemon can be framed in one of 2 ways thematically based on which game you play. In Pokemon Amber, they are consumed by rage and mindless, seeking to enact their chaos on the world to liberate, imagine I'm using heavy quotation marks with my hands, it from forces who prevent them from doing what they want to do. They want anarchy. In Pokemon Granite, however, these Pokemon are framed as freedom fighters, Pokemon who see oppression in conformity and place a high value on individualism. Each design is made in the context of Pokemon Granite rather than Pokemon Amber to make sure they reach their full potential. You might find yourself asking, if this is a Pokemon who values free thinking, why would Fury Max Honchkrow have an emphasis on commanding other Pokemon? And I think that's a fair question. For me, it comes down to the fact that freedom and individuality don't imply a complete lack of overlap in values altogether. Fury Max Honchkrow excels at finding its overlap with others and respects their ability to make their own choices and ideals. In this, it gains the respect of other Pokemon who heed its call into battle against those who might try and take that freedom from them. Hence, its posing, where it uses a massive wing to signal other Pokemon to attack. I also just wanted a really big hat that Fury Max Honchkrow could wear because not only is it cool, but it adds to that intimidation factor. Meet Fury Max Honchkrow, the Furious Boss Pokemon. Honchkrow's increased size, when it is Fury Maxed, allows it to command large armies of Pokemon, fighting against the systems that would otherwise try to hold them down. It uses its massive wings to give orders, which are also weapons in their own right. Able to generate fierce winds and even tornadoes, Fury Max Honchkrow will happily use its strength without considering the wake of destruction it may leave behind. The other artifact that Sonosite guards looks like this. Seeing any resemblance to a Pokemon you might know? I've noticed over the years that when I examine my Pokemon preferences, I tend to gravitate towards Pokemon that are not well received by the community. I have fond memories of playing Pokemon White and hearing at school how bad Garbodor and Druddigon were. Instinctively, I added them to my team, and now they're some of my favorites. It's easy to love the cute and super cool Pokemon. I get it. They're cute and super cool. Young CJ took the message of the games to heart, though. It's not just about finding the coolest or the strongest Pokemon and using them to obliterate your way to the endgame. Not that there's anything wrong with that playstyle, it's just not for me. Even to this day, I try and catch as many new Pokemon as I can and battle with them, forming bonds along the way. That's why I love Palmont. It's the most egregious Pika-clone we've ever had, but he's also incredibly cute. I've built a TCG deck around him just because of that bond, and it's genuine. I love the guy. It's a little sappy, but Dustox falls into the same category for me. I get why people would opt for Beautifly. It's beautiful and it flies. It's pretty straightforward. I always felt like Dustox didn't get enough credit for being dusty and toxing. Okay, so the naming conventions aren't the same, but you get my point. Dustox has a muted color scheme, it's a poison type, and it doesn't have any defined pupils. I think there's a lot about this Pokemon that might initially turn someone away from it, and that's okay. I've always loved how eerie it looks, and I mean this lovingly. It's ugly. But I used it in a playthrough the first time I played Pearl, and now it has my affection and appreciation forever. Even when I went backwards to play Emerald, I was excited to learn that I could still have it on my team. That's why I want Hero Max Dustox to kind of be the glue of its theoretical Pokerangers team. Dustox and its trainer would work hard to hold everyone together and keep the team unified, somewhat counter to its poison typing, which I think would typically make it easy to lean into some kind of villain or bad boy route, but really this is a Pokemon that loves and wants to be loved. And I think that that kind of personality always pulls people together and draws them closer to one another. This kind of comes through in its mech design as well, where I want it to be air support. It can fly up high, see the battlefield, and help the team make decisions by providing information. It's also got rocket launcher antennas, so pretty cool stuff. Meet Hero Max Dustox, the unified moth Pokemon. Hero Max Dustox has answered the call to unify against the dark forces attempting to plunge Wentano into chaos. In its Hero Max form, it can fly at incredibly high speeds and launch its antennae rockets at foes. It can introduce poisonous elements into the chemtrails that it has when it's attacking foes to disorient and weaken them. It prefers to operate unseen while still contributing to the efforts of a larger group with purpose. Now, Sonosite does have a counterpart, and really, I want to break this down a little bit further. Sonosite leans towards the Pokemon Amber side of things, where it's more good-natured, and this counterpart, it's not evil, but it definitely leans more Pokemon Granite. It's got the looks and appeal of Pokemon Amber's box legendary, and still the mentality, that rage of the Pokemon Granite box legendary. I know I'm kind of talking around all of this, but it'll make sense when we get there. Just hold on tight. And for this Pokemon, I mean it. Hold on tight. This is one of the fastest Pokemon to ever exist. And there's a pretty important reason why. It's because I like competition. I like winning, actually. I'm pretty competitive myself. And you may or may not know this, but the fastest bird alive is the peregrine falcon, and it wins significantly. I don't know if you know this or not. Tell me if you do in the comments. But the fastest bird alive, the peregrine falcon, achieves this fastest bird alive moniker by diving, like going up super high into the air and then just going into a free fall. It tucks in its wings and reaches speeds of over 220 miles per hour on the regular. Now that's insane. If anyone's ever gone that fast before, I also want to know that. But here's what I think is interesting. Falling is kind of cheating, right? Like a cheetah runs at 70 miles per hour on land. That's kind of more impressive than just being good at falling. And the fastest, just stable flight animal is not a bird. It's a bat. The false-tailed bat can fly in a straight line at 150 miles per hour. Now, you're saying to yourself, that's 70 miles per hour less, but that's fighting against gravity. That's in stable flight, which I think is just as impressive and to me sets up the rivalry of these two Pokemon. One engages in stable flight, high speeds, very powerful, uses its echolocation. The other goes up high and dive bombs its opponents to reach even higher speeds with a more aggressive intensity. And that is what this Pokemon's all about. You'll notice it's got sharp spikes on its wings and razor talons and a big spiked crest on its head, all for this attacking strategy, essentially allowing it to just dive straight at you and use its wings to slice through you. Meet Audivine, the steep dive Pokemon. Audivine are a violent Pokemon eager to dive bomb any who might attack their sacred location in which it nests. The metal spikes that line the tips of its feathers make its attacks deadly and often lethal. No one's quite sure where the bracers on its legs came from, but very few have survived an encounter with the Pokemon to theorize about it. It guards a relic which acts as a seal for an ancient Pokemon whom it might be loyal to. Some of you have been around long enough to remember that the very first Hero Max Pokemon we ever revealed was Heracross, and I think it's fair that we go out with the last one being Pinsir. I know this is kind of an unofficial duo, but they got Megas at the same time, they came out in the same generation, and to me they've always been rivals, maybe, or at least comparable. I like the idea of setting them up in this Poke Rangers team as kind of these friends to rivals to friends dynamic. Not quite your Deku to Bakugo, I don't want it to get that aggressive, but maybe friends who actively compete with each other. Hero Max Pinsir specifically is meant to demonstrate loyalty and a strong sense of justice. I really want the spikes on its head to be a symbol of fighting for others, not for oneself. And let's talk about what that means. You may have noticed, but all of the Hero Max Pokemon are bug types. You've got Heracross, Golisopod, Galvantula, Dustox, and now Pinsir. These 5 all lose their bug typing when they Hero Max, becoming steel types instead, and in the case of Pinsir, gaining 1 new additional type. It's the only one to do that, and I just didn't want it to be the same as Hero Max Heracross. And the fighting type made sense for the other themes that I wanted to give it. The difference is that for Fury Max Pokemon, they all retain their primary typing and gain dark typing as a secondary typing. I know that's maybe a little convoluted, but the point is that these Hero Max Pokemon sacrifice their identity as bugs to become these giant mechs and fight for others, whereas the Fury Max Pokemon retain their individuality and what they are and still gain that dark ragefulness. That's poor wording, but you get the point. Pinsir specifically was really hard to turn into a mech. You might think it was Golisopod, which is very complicated in its design, and that did take me a long time to draw, just to reflect that complexity, but Hero Max Pinsir just gave me less to work with. It was kind of just an oval with horns, and so making sure that it could clearly be identified as Pinsir and still take on this new boxy mechanical shape was trickier to tackle than I imagined. Meet Hero Max Pinsir, the unified stag Pokemon. Hero Max Pinsir has a strong sense of justice and an equally strong love of battle. Using its massive horns, it will charge into any foe, regardless of size or risk. It has heeded the call of an ancient Pokemon to join in the fight against evil and save Wentano. Its reckless behavior can sometimes lead to unintended consequences or damage to the surrounding area, but Hero Max Pinsir always has its heart in the right place. Now we're going to talk about our final Fury Max form for the day. And I know what you're thinking. Is that my favorite crocodile I see? Yes, it is. Let's all say it on 3 together. 1, 2, 3, crocodile. What did you just say? Why wasn't it crocodile? You like the starters more? No, that doesn't make sense. No, but really, I think a lot of people do love all the crocodile Pokemon. I don't even think there's hate for crocodile, but I do think for alligator and Skeledirge, especially recently, have gotten a little love, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it's always been crocodile. I remember booting up Pokemon White, getting out into the desert and seeing Sandile for the first time. Oh, he was so cute. And then he turned into a red version of himself that was bigger and spikier. It's a no-brainer. I mean, I literally, every time I played the game, gotta have a crocodile. So awesome. And so this one was a little self-indulgent. Admittedly, the other Fury Max forms, I tried to be a little bit more creative in terms of I want to make interesting picks as to which Pokemon get to Fury Max, but Crocodile, it was solely because I love Crocodile. Literally, maybe my favorite dark type. It's a hard competition to win because I do love a lot of dark types, but he's up there. I also wanted him to have the most kaiju-iness design because he's kind of set up for it. I didn't want to make him full Godzilla. That build really wouldn't read Crocodile if you were to just stick his features on it, but I can make him bigger and more Godzilla-esque. I don't know. You guys think of better wording for me. I'm having a hard time today. But the point is, I wanted him bigger, I wanted him spikier, and I wanted him to have a massive tail. Now, the other thing that I love about Crocodile is his sunglasses that are only in the anime, and he never actually evolves to wear them. I don't think. I only remember him having them in his middle stage, but I wanted him to have bigger eyepieces to reflect the cool sunglasses from the anime in this form. Again, this is wholly self-indulgent. I have no shame about this. I love this Pokemon, especially getting to flip his color scheme so that he's black with red stripes instead. Oh man, it was so fun. I loved it. Meet Fury Max Crocodile, the furious intimidation Pokemon. Fury Max Crocodile takes its spikes and spines to a much larger scale, adding to its ability to intimidate other Pokemon and people. This, combined with its ability to generate dust storms with each footstep, make it a terrifying foe. It has resonated with the dark energy of an ancient Pokemon, giving it newfound strength and determination. Its tail can wipe out a city block with a single swing in any direction. One way that I wanted to break away from the traditional Power Rangers or Super Sentai format was to start with a team of 6 good Rangers. You have the 5 Hero Max forms you've already seen in Pinsir, Heracross. Well, I guess I have to leave that in my audio now, but it's Heracross and I do know that. So, starting over. Galvantula, Golisopod, Heracross, Pinsir, and Dustox. But they also need a leader, and that is our box legendary for Pokemon Amber. Now, I wanted this Pokemon to really have something special to it. I put a lot of thought into its design, giving it a unique body shape, unique themes, and really wanted it to stand on its own against other legendary Pokemon. I wanted it to feel regal, royal, powerful, and unifying. And that's why I chose to go with a bee. Now, my design does take from some wasp anatomy, so if you want to call me out for that in the comments, go ahead. But I live in Utah, in the United States. For those of you who don't know where Utah is, we are the beehive state. It's a very proud thing here. And what that means is that the people of Utah actively seek to work together like a beehive for the greater good. Now, obviously, nobody does that perfectly. In fact, it's everyone's working on it. That's the point. But a beehive in and of itself is probably one of the greatest achievements in nature. Think about, first of all, the miracle of honey, but bees have been one of the most successful animals on the planet, and the only thing that's really ruined it for them has been us. So I guess we have that going for us. But my bee Pokemon is a leader. This is a Pokemon that unifies people, and that's one of the themes that I really wanted to dive into with Pokemon Amber. In contrast to individuality, what are the benefits of working together? Of learning to compromise, of learning to give up of oneself for the benefit of others. There's something noble in that. And I think it's really something we lack a lot in our own society right now, where we see so many people who seek to take for themselves and make the most for themselves and leave everyone else behind. It's kind of a depressing state that we live in at this time, and I wanted a Pokemon who fought against that. And so that's what Ambocrita does. Meet Ambocrita, the unification Pokemon. Ambocrita is the true embodiment of unification and cooperation, drawing on the strength of others to create change. Ambocrita respects those who fight together and sacrifice their own needs for the greater good. Long ago, it and other Pokemon who shared its values sacrificed their lives to seal away a great evil bent on forcing the worlds into chaos and rage. Its noble sacrifice is still remembered across the Wentano region today. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, CJ, you just described a bunch of really great, noble attributes. If you're going to make a Pokemon opposite of that, wouldn't it make that an evil Pokemon in nature? And I think that it's going to be perceived that way, at least in Pokemon Amber, but the other box legendary, the one for Pokemon Granite, definitely isn't evil. Though it is a dark type, at least, so maybe it is a little bit. But really, the opposite of the group is the individual. And this is another thing that I think, surprisingly, we lack in society today. And so I wanted to make a Pokemon that embodied individuality. Now, I think in some ways we have a lot of people who get to express their individuality in exciting and new ways that we haven't gotten to have in society before. But at the same time, I think we see a lot of people take cooperation too far to the point of groupthink, right? They're just doing and thinking what other people are telling them to. And that is the exact thing that this Pokemon hates. This Pokemon, instead of seeking to work together at all costs, values individuality and freedom above all else. This is the kind of Pokemon that wants you to be able to do the things you want to do and live the life you want to live without other people telling you what to do. I think we have very little of that in today's society, and that's okay. Again, it's something that we're working on, but I think sometimes we view these two sides of a coin as one has to be good and the other is bad, right? You can't have a group and an individual. We have to do what other people say or else, or we have to only fight for ourselves or else. And that's not really true. Even this Pokemon, it lends its rage to others, right? Its rage seeps out into other Pokemon, causing them to Fury Max, giving them the ability to fight for their own freedoms. I don't think individuality means that there's a lack of cooperation, and neither does this Pokemon. Really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I wanted to create a badger Pokemon, which is kind of the opposite of a bee, in that it's aggressive, it fights for its own territory, it protects itself. And, in Africa, you have honey badgers who eat the honey of honeybees. But on top of all of that, this is a Pokemon that fights for your freedom, not just its own. Meet Mamorage, the rebellion Pokemon. Mamorage is the true embodiment of individuality and rebellion, drawing on its own strength to create change. Mamorage respects those who fight their own battles and forge their own paths. Long ago, it and other Pokemon who shared its value of individuality sacrificed their lives to seal away a great evil bent on forcing the world to conform to hideous mind control. Its noble sacrifice is still remembered across Wentano. And that should be the end of the... Wait, what's happening? Oh no! Oh no! Yeah, I was just messing around. There's actually 2 more forms we have to talk about. And let's start with Fury Max Mamorage. Now, we're going to talk about both games here, Pokemon Granite and Amber, but we're going to start with Pokemon Granite first. In the lore of Pokemon Granite, you work alongside Solar Ranger Xander, who himself is fighting against his own sister Soraya. to keep the world from falling into Ambacrata's mind control. Now, that's only in the view of Pokemon Granite, of course. But in that story, Ambacrata would seek to unify the world forcibly, using its psychic powers essentially to mass mind wipe and control all citizens of the Earth, including Pokemon and people. Now, obviously, that's a bad thing, and so a Pokemon who fights for individualism would be vehemently against that. And that's really what the ancient battle that they fought was, and they're sealed away. As you and Xander race across the Wentano region trying to collect artifacts and prevent them from falling into the hands of the Pokerangers and inevitably Ambacrata, you fight alongside Mamarage, which would be Xander's partner Pokemon. Now, you don't really see it, he's got a team, and you only get to Mamarage at the very end when it is unsealed alongside Ambacrata. This is the form that it takes. Now, you're probably noticing it looks like all of the other Fury Max Pokemon that we've seen up until this point. And for a Pokemon that's individual, why would it do that? To me, all of the Fury Max forms up until now have come from other Pokemon taking Mamarage's Fury and Rage into them. And now they're going to give it back, right? Being an individual doesn't mean you can't give of yourself. And so these Pokemon nobly give their power and fury and rage to Mamarage itself, who can now take on their attributes and still be an individual. It takes on other Pokemon's burdens and stands alone to fight so that they don't have to, if that makes sense. Now, in the rival game of Pokemon Amber, this is the form that the Pokerangers and you are going to have to fight against. This is an ultimate evil that seeks to plunge the world into chaos, where everything's so free that there's no rules and no order, and nobody benefits from it except for people who fight for the individual. Meet Fury Max Mamarage, the furious Pokemon. Mamarage Fury Maxes only when it resonates with the rage of other Pokemon around it. Feeding off of their negative emotions, it pulls them into itself and mutates into a horrific monstrosity. It stands alone, taking on the burdens of other Pokemon who would be otherwise in pain. In this form, it seeks to defend Wentano from Ambacrata, who would submit the land to her mind control under the guise of unification and good. Now, obviously we have one final form to cover for our very last Wentanoan Pokemon, and I could just explain it to you, but I'd rather set the stage. Imagine you and your friends, the Pokerangers, have done everything you can to stop a great evil. It seems like you've prevented Mamarage from emerging from its slumber, only for the Dark Ranger Xander to appear, awaken the Pokemon, and Fury Max it, accessing the rage of all Pokemon across the Wentanoan region to try and plunge it into chaos, into anarchy. In a last desperate plea, you gather all of the artifacts that you and your friends have collected over your journey, bring them to an injured Ambacrata who tried to fight against Mamarage in its Fury Max form, but didn't have the strength to do so alone. Suddenly, all of the partner Pokemon of the Pokerangers, Dustox, Gliscopod, Galvantula, Pinsir, and Heracross, begin to vibrate. They begin to glow, and so does Ambacrata too. Suddenly, Hero Max Ambacrata stands tall, above everything else. It alone, the unification of 6 different Pokemon into a single being, stands against Mamarage and its Fury Max powers to defend Wentano from anarchy and chaos to protect the greater good. That's the kind of finality that I want to have in a Pokemon game. I don't know if we've really had something at that scale in a long time. Don't get me wrong, I liked the ending of Scarlet and Violet. I thought it was fun. But to me, what were the stakes? What were the implications? It just didn't feel like there were any. And that's okay. You know, it doesn't always have to have high stakes every time, but I kind of miss the grand adventure that Pokemon used to have. And I think can still have. And that's what Hero Max and Ambacrata is meant to embody. That final scene where your giant robot faces off against a giant monster across cities into the desert, wherever, to defend the greater good. And it stands also as the finality of the theme of unification. these 6 bug Pokemon sacrificing their identities as bug Pokemon to become something new altogether, something that pulls from all of them and contributes to something greater. That's what it's all about. That's what unification really is. And again, it's not like they're losing themselves entirely. It's that they're contributing to something bigger than themselves to make positive change in the world around them. And I think there's value in that. Just like there's value in individuality. It's all about balance, right? And really, Hero Max and Bakrita could also be the villain of the story, right? Where it forces unification, where it takes that mind control that it has the ability to do and uses it to bring Wentano under its control to create its own form of utopia without considering what others might want or need. Mama Rage stands against that. I think really in each story, the villain stands at the farthest end of its theme, right? If you take individuality too far, if you take unification too far, where do you end up? And also, at the same time, Hero Max and Bakrita stands as a pillar of unification, all the good that it can do, all the good that working together can bring, and Mama Rage does the same for individuality and reminding us of the importance and value that being an individual has. Anyways, meet Hero Max and Bakrita, the unified Pokemon. Hero Max and Bakrita calls on all of its allies and Pokemon who would follow it into battle to join together and become something greater than any one individual. Together they fight against the evils of Mama Rage, who would send the Wentano region into chaos and anarchy. Hero Max and Bakrita is a single being made of 6 whose minds have been unified into one. I want to say thank you for everyone who stuck around all the way to the end of this video. I know I can get a little rambly, especially when talking about Bakrita and Mama Rage, but these are some of the first Pokemon that I created for my region a long, long time ago. These are ideas that I've had rolling around inside my head for a year and a half, at least, if not longer. These themes of unification and individualism, they really matter to me. They're 2 things that have shaped my life. You know, the desire to be myself, but also the desire to be part of something bigger than myself. That's an interesting battle that I feel like rages within me every single day. And I appreciate everyone who is along for the journey with me as we talked about these incredible Pokemon and the incredible Pokemon we've had the chance to make over the last year and a half. For those of you who are wondering what's next, well, it looks a little bit like this. You know what? Here, let me just take a picture.